Para começar esse episódio, então, eu preciso te dar um recado importantíssimo. Maio é o mês da remuneração, você já sabe, e a gente está comemorando 30 anos. E a gente não pode comemorar sem oferecer para vocês um monte de presente. Tá aqui nesse evento, cobrindo esse evento nos Estados Unidos, é um deles, um baita presentaço para vocês, pra gente também é um privilégio. E a gente tá oferecendo também para os novos contratos da Consulta Salarial, que é a maior plataforma de remuneração do Brasil, 10% de desconto. Então, se você quiser conhecer a Consulta, você precisa clicar no link, tá? Que tá aqui embaixo, para garantir esse desconto. Também preciso te dizer que a gente vai viver uma imersão do Quinto Dia Útil. É isso aí. Eu tô falando do Open House do Quinto Dia Útil. Vai rolar dia 19 de junho, lá em Dayatuba, um evento presencial imersivo. Quer conhecer como é que é os bastidores do podcast, como que a gente grava os episódios? Quer ter a oportunidade de fazer perguntas diretamente para os entrevistados? Conhecer o pessoal da carreira? Se conectar com mais de 300 profissionais de remuneração? Essa é a oportunidade para você. Clica no link então, garante seu ingresso e a gente se vê lá. Que os profissionais de remuneração precisam aprender a se conectar com as pessoas e contar boas histórias, você já sabe, porque a gente fala muito sobre isso aqui. O entrevistado de hoje, então, que você vai assistir agora nessa conversa, é o Bryan Briscoe. Ele é VP de Remuneração e RH na TK Elevator. Quer saber o que uma pessoa nesse cargo, nessa posição, faz? A gente perguntou pro Bryan. E ele também veio aqui no evento, no Total Rewards 24, apresentar um painel sobre storytelling, como que a gente usa o humor, a comédia, para se conectar com as pessoas e transitar ali pelas questões de remuneração com humor, com bom humor, com soluções criativas. O Bryan, ele é fã de filmes, ele é fã de stand-up, ele veio aqui para contar pra gente a importância do profissional de remuneração e de RH aprender a se comunicar e se conectar com as pessoas de verdade. Quer conhecer mais sobre essa conversa? Então fica com a gente aqui.
Bryan Briscoe, welcome to the Quinto Dia Útil podcast.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to learn about storytelling and all the stuff you studying.
Are you also excited about payday like we are, because we named our podcast after
I love it.
this?
Yeah, I love it.
This is why we all show up to work. So it's a great, we always talk about a lot of things and all that, but I've not found any places where if you don't pay people, they don't show up. Yeah. So it's a great name.
You know, like before during this conversation, you were at Merit. And now you are in Thyssenkrupp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So now we're TK Elevator.
TK Elevator.
Yeah, it was Thyssenkrupp, but the business got spun off a couple of years ago. So I just joined. So I'm at the conference, but today would be day 12 that I'm on the new job. So still have a lot to learn, but great team, learning a lot of things.
And how does that feel for you? Because we don't have much this position in Brazil, and also VP of Total Rewards. That's a total specialized position. So
but before, let me ask you something. Like, because of this rebranding, I told you Thyssenkrupp, because I know this company and I was watching this. Tell us about the story that involved this rebranding with Thyssenkrupp.
Yeah. So I think you had a broader company. That was, the company's still headquartered in Germany, but, you sort of had the broader Thyssenkrupp, which still exists.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago decided that, with the business environment, they needed to find, probably to find a little bit of cash somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so they sold their elevator escalator business, which was something that was really profitable. So private equity firms pick that up, and of course, when you have that spinoff, you got to rename things, and I think the brand was still really powerful. So the TK Elevator just sort of keeps that that tribute to the original name and company and brand.
I think there's a tendency, like we see Ernest Young doing the same, EY, Willis Towers Watson, WTW. Yeah,
very
it's easy
similar.
to
you want to follow in the abbreviations. Once you're well enough known, it's kind of like, it's like Star Wars: Return of the Jedi is ROTJ, and we all know what that is if we're Star Wars nerds. So yeah,
we're gonna talk about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Your question for.
Yeah, exactly. So we were talking about the VP position, in Total Rewards. In Brazil, that's not a common position because we don't have so specialized positions in compensation, for example.
Right.
So how does that feel for you?
Yeah. So the Total Rewards piece is really combining. so compensation as a profession is one thing, and then you have the a lot of times as you're thinking about total rewards, what's different about that than compensation is pulling in the benefits piece. That is probably an American-centric thing because benefits in the United States are not as provided by the state. Like we started, whatever with the Industrial Revolution, American companies decided to fill in where the American government maybe doesn't provide things like health insurance and all of that. So benefits is kind of its own discipline that doesn't exist in the same way in most other parts of the world. And then you try to put all that together. So at any, pretty much 99% of American companies, you'll find that comp and benefits are the two largest expenses that are there. And in most places, compensation is the biggest thing. So making sure that people have access to not only getting the pay, not just the payday piece, but that they have access to health insurance and those things is where the total rewards kind of comes in. That's the big distinction there.
I think we have specialists in Brazil, but in this level we don't have, because in our case we have directors like is responsible for HR, and then you are like working for these job positions. So, but here like you have many
ramifications.
Yeah.
Like these, like with specialists, like
Give the
benefits, like insurance,
centers of expertise, or things like
that. For expertise. So I have this expertise in benefits, like insurance. You have I'm a specialist here, and then we have a VP, like to control all this.
Right.
In a day-to-day basis, what does a VP does?
So and I've done this role in a couple of different places, and so I would say, it's a lot of meetings, which is maybe everybody's favorite thing. But I think of it as part of it as being a conduit between the executive team and like where the work. Sometimes I talk about like the teams that I lead or where the work actually gets done. A lot of times my job is making sure that we get communicated, that we coordinate. I've described the jobs that I've had for the last 5 years as being 70% managing down, 70% managing sideways, and 70% managing up, which, no, that doesn't add up to 100%. But you are, whether it's the C-suite, you're trying to make sure that they're informed of legal changes that are happening, of like the labor market. There's been a lot of disruption in the labor market. We had a global pandemic and those things. So it's everything from informing people at the top to coordinating with other people, both inside and outside of HR, sort of side to side, to make sure the operations happen, as well as then trying to make sure that the team that reports to me is taken care of.
And don't you ever get tired of people asking you about what should I do? What kind of decision should I make?
I would, that is that's part of like the leadership thing is like, what do we do about this? I would say like the evolution of I've done every job in HR from like payroll clerk to chief people officer at some point in my life. And part of it is like, you develop experiences and you do those things so that you can answer those questions. So in some ways, that's like the value that I can provide. Like there's a lot of work that I used to do, like as an individual contributor or as a manager, but as you become a leader, it's trying to make sure that other people are empowered to make those decisions. So like that part is fun, like watching people grow and learn new things and become confident in the ability to take on things and answer it. That like at this stage in my career, that's the more fun part for me.
Yeah. So are you happy doing what you do? Are you happy doing what you do?
Yeah. Like I have had a number of different roles over the years, and like the place that I get happiest is how do we optimize resources? When people say, like at every company I've been at, if I go and hold like a open forum and say, hey, like I'm the compensation leader or I do whatever, people will be like, well, can't you just pay us more because we would all be happier? I say, well, like I'm always trying to find that blend between, if I pay you too much, then the company doesn't make money, the shareholders start to ask questions, and then people lose their jobs. If I pay you too little, you get unhappy and you leave and do those things. So as a compensation person, the simplest question I'm trying to answer, and there's a lot of other questions, but the simplest question is how do I get to the point where I'm not overpaying people so much that like the business suffers, but not not underpaying them so much that
people suffer.
that people suffer. Exactly. So you're trying to find that like happy middle place, which if you think about trying to find that happy middle place, that's kind of what like we're all doing in life in certain ways. We're all trying to sort of find that balance, that optimization.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question.
Right.
But I was listening about it, research. I think it's a Harvard happiness study, something like this, talking about this point, the money. Like it was maybe $75,000 a year.
Study years ago that
I think it's almost there.
$75,000 a year is kind of the point where you have diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Like that's the point where the people are the happiest.
Yes.
I don't know with inflation if 75,000. So, if that study is I can't tell you exactly what year it's from, but that study goes back probably 10 or 15 years.
Yes.
Like, let's say it's $100,000 a year or something like that now. There is definitely, I think, for every person it's a little bit different, but they found for most people, there's a diminishing returns after that point. And I think a lot of that, though, has to do with how you frame things and like what you're trying to do in life and sort of what your goals are. So,
yeah, I understand you. And, to connect this, I remember that I was watching TED is spreading
TED
word.
Talks.
I did TED
Spread the
Talks,
word,
And this study was being presenting in this program that we have 20 years of data, 2 months, and 15 minutes to tell me all the story about it.
Yeah.
This is the point that you told in our LinkedIn, I'm passionate about using data and storytelling. Tell us why.
Yeah. And that's so the data and storytelling is a funny thing because I do find that to be a passion point for me because I love to find that optimization point is not driven by feelings, it's driven by data. Like we're trying to find to optimize people's benefits, to optimize people's pay, driven by what they want, what they need, and sort of where that confluence is. And sometimes people don't even know what they want. So it's neat when you find things like, people will say, well, if you just paid me more, I'd be happy. Well, we've had little experiments have been created where it's like, okay, I paid you more, and 6 weeks later, you're not happy.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like your boss, maybe what you really want is your boss to quit yelling at you or making unrealistic deadlines or whatever those things are. But the data piece is finding like where do we see those sources of truth? Like I've worked in companies before where we've seen where people have said, hey, we need everybody to work 45 hours a week instead of a 40-hour a week. And when we've looked at the data and said, you know what, the people that are working 40 hours a week are performing just as much work as the people that you're forcing to work 45. And it turns out they just watch the clock the extra 5 hours. Or they're not that more productive. So why don't you just send those people home? And it turns out like productivity doesn't go away. Like when you can make an impact on people's lives by saying like, hey, let's step back and question everything. That's sort of the passionate place for me. If I was going to go on and build on that, as a younger person, like as I would dive into these things, where someone gave me the advice on the storytelling was, I would want to show like that 20 years of data that you talked about. I would want to be like, here's my spreadsheets. There's 10 million data points. There's this, and I would want to do that. What I realized was like, yeah, you get 3 bullet points on the slide with an executive, or you get 5 minutes to like make a pitch to connect with them. And so the storytelling point is, how do I make the right visualization? How do I find the right words? What's that elevator pitch to like simplify that down to say, hey, how do I connect with that person? And, connecting with a CEO is different than connecting with a CHRO or connecting with a manufacturing leader. But finding like, hey, where's that connection point where they'll understand what these millions of points of data told me, and like how succinct can I make that?
Yeah, I agree. Like it's not easy to do this. We have many personas, as you told me, a CEO and a coordinator. They have different interests, but we need to understand those one to produce a good story for both. Right. And I like to watch movies because we can understand storytelling like watching movies. I have 2 that I was thinking like Castaway.
Yeah,
it's famous one like Wilson, but remember we produce a storytelling to sell a brand like Wilson,
right?
And then I'm totally involved in this brand, and then when I go to the market, it's not necessary to explain anything because the value is in my brain and I don't know how can I explain why I'm looking to this brand and not this one.
Yeah.
Like because of the value. The other one is like to build this storytelling, the devil wears Prada. Is correct?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
It's a huge one, not because of the movie, Oscar award or something. No, because of the story, because they have a sequence that respect all the steps we need to put the value inside our
Right.
minds. Like
Right.
the movies teach us. But Bryan, like episodes like this, we love because we understand.
Yeah.
If you have a good project, but you are a bad sales guy to do the
Right.
pitch, you don't have anything.
Right.
A good idea without this. But fair. When we go back to the episodes we have talking about storytelling or design,
Design
thinking, or
yeah.
the people from HR and special compensation, they are not looking for it. And we are trying all the time tell them like, you need to understand it.
Yeah.
Right.
And the gap is right there because we are always saying communication is a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
With when we talk about total rewards, for example. But a way to solve these communications problems is learning how to tell a story, to
Right.
tell people what they already have,
Right.
or what they should value more, or understanding what they value to offer people what they want, they will really want. So it's all about storytelling.
Right. And I think storytelling has gotten harder. So like I love movies, so I love the fact that you're going there with that because I'm a huge movie buff. Like, okay, other than like scary movies, I don't like scary movies. I'll admit
Me
that.
too.
Me neither.
But everything else, like it doesn't matter. Like I love science fiction, romantic comedy, action movies, slapstick, whatever. I'll pretty much watch anything. And I've used movie references. I've used movie references to tell stories all of the time. But and my teams that work for me, sometimes they're like, "Is there like a catalog that we need?" Sometimes,
Yeah,
people
like
work for me.
how
I'm like,
can you do this?
I'm like, you need to watch the AFI 100 best movies just because I'm going to speak about those as if it's like as if you've like if you haven't seen Titanic, how am I going to be able to like relate to you?
Yeah.
On whatever thing it is. What's been interesting over the last couple of years is, and this was talked about at the conference earlier this week too, and I've seen the research, is like people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter.
Yes.
So it's like over the last couple of years, it's even dropped from like 11 seconds to 8 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about, TikTok, Instagram Reels, and as
Yes.
people are scrolling through it, the ability to tell a story faster and faster. Like if you watch an old movie, like from like the 1960s, 1970s, they have a song at the beginning, they have an intro, like what is it? The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah.
It's like a famous Clint Eastwood movie. Nobody speaks in that movie for like 22 minutes or something. Like there's just absolute silence, and there's all this lead in, and there's all this build up, and there's all these things. And now if you go watch a modern movie, like the trailer for the movie comes on, and then like you're immediately in a scene where like somebody's getting killed or their car is getting, like they're jumping off a bridge, and then they're like, wait, now let's go back and tell you that like like you go straight into an action scene in a movie now.
Now that I got your attention,
and then
here's
the flashback. And I think that that learning from that storytelling as an HR professional is super important to go like, I have to do something to sort of shock you into like paying attention to me, because I have 8 seconds to figure out if you're even going to give me like the next 4 minutes. People are like, oh, I get 5 minutes with the CEO. You don't get 5 minutes with the CEO.
Of course.
You get 8 seconds with the CEO, and then if the next 5 minutes, if he's not like checking email or doing something else, that's where you have to get. And that's not a dig on CEOs. That's true with everybody. That's true with your. It doesn't matter if you're talking about the receptionist at your office.
Yeah.
If you're trying to do compensation training with them, you have 8 seconds to go, is this person going to like help me out or not?
Yeah, like I have two areas in my hands, like sales and marketing. And talking about sales, like these 8 seconds, I understand. Like when I go to a client, I'm fine to understand the clothes they use or the way they act, because when you go there, I need to break all these paradigms. Is yes, correct?
We do paradigms in English.
Paradigms, yeah. You understand? Yeah, paradigms. Like, because I can't do anything out of this world because I just have 8 seconds.
Yeah.
And then if you do something wrong, you need minutes and minutes to try to correct.
Yeah.
But most of the times you don't have this time and conditions to do that. So we need to understand this first 8 seconds.
Yeah.
Right.
And in marketing as well, because sometimes you don't even have seconds to talk to someone. You have seconds to write something, a title, an email title, or a thumbnail, things.
Scroll through.
Exactly.
Yes.
So sometimes it's not even 8 seconds. They are not
Right.
even 8 seconds.
Well, and the other thing about that is like then how to be authentic with that, right?
Yeah.
Like how do you, because you have 8 seconds, but you reminded me as you talked about it, like there's a phrase that somebody told me years ago that was like, trust takes a long time to earn, but can easily be lost. Like if you talk about trust, whether you're talking about consumers as a marketer or your employees or your family, you know, you can build trust over 20 years, but you can lose it in 5 minutes.
Yes.
If you betray someone, do something wrong, do whatever that is. So as you go through, like, you know, in the storytelling piece, like being authentic and real with people. So like if you're communicating with your employees and you're not authentic, like if you try to hide stuff from them, if you try to be, you know, obfuscate, like, you know, just make it really unclear for them.
Yeah.
You know, if you're like, I don't want to address the real issue that you're asking about, you lose trust with that, which then makes your next communication, you know,
I got it.
start from a very different place. So that all of this puts way more pressure on us to like deliver clear, authentic, real, concise, quick communication.
I understand because, you know, we have this podcast for YouTube, but when you go to Instagram, it's not the same way.
No.
Like this, the word is good. Authentic is not the way we talk with the people in this moment of their lives using the Instagram. So in this, we need to be ourselves, but we need to rebrand the way we talk and the way we produce these images, all this stuff. So this is the part that it's getting make me feel like tired because you have too many platforms to do content. Every time you need to understand one and another. So it's not easy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we build on that trust piece, like what you're talking about, the different things, like if anybody's still listening to this podcast or watching this on YouTube still at this point in this, like you all, because it's your audience, I'm just a guest, but you all have built enough trust with them for them to say, like, hey, we want to be here through this. So like you're not trying to necessarily capture them in the 8 seconds. Like they're not the same audience that you're trying to hit on Instagram. But if you want to bring more people to say like, hey, am I going to learn something from this? You've got to like in those, you know, few seconds as they're flipping through Instagram, you've got to give them a nugget that they go like, maybe if I listen to the long form version of this, I'll pick up 3 or 4 things and maybe that'll be worth the time, whether I'm driving or out for a run or like wherever people are consuming the content.
Yeah, you need to understand this, and it's not easy. You told some word, a nugget.
I heard that so many times here. And it's so funny because for me, nugget only means the food, you know, that you get on McDonald's.
So it is that, right, okay.
But it's the same. Yeah,
it's the concept is, so if you think of the nugget at McDonald's, what we're saying is, like I'm not necessarily going to be able to bring to all of your listeners a full meal of like it may not be enough. You know, there may not be enough meat for them to say like, hey, what does this guy in America that does this total rewards job do? But maybe there's a little piece. Maybe there's just a little piece that they can consume. So that really is like your nugget. Where so sorry that you don't use it, but you guys feel free to like. I didn't.
But I think
like
I'm gonna adopt
it.
It's so cool to say nugget.
It's that little piece that hopefully somebody walks away from.
Remember, I showed you the programs we have, Quinto Dia Útil, and another one was Consulta aqui is a nugget. Like I was trying to find some word to explain that. We have 8 minutes to talk about ESG. Of course, you can't talk about ESG in 5 minutes. So
now it's our slogan, a compensation nugget.
Compensation nugget.
I like it. I like
You
it.
could do
Could
it.
be
Yeah.
You could start the whole. So what does that translate to in Portuguese?
Não, colher de chá, não sei o que
Pílula.
seria. Pílula.
It's called a pill, like a pill.
Like a pill.
We say in Portuguese could be pílula, but is this the
But
same
a
as
nugget
nugget?
is much
I think it's
better.
no.
Much better.
I don't know.
You can borrow
No,
it.
Yeah.
it tastes better
Tastes better.
than
Good.
a pill.
That's great. Yeah. Oh.
So we were talking about titles and these eight seconds that we have to catch the attentions of the audience. And your presentation, one of them, the title is comedy, compensation comedy,
Yeah.
navigating misconceptions with a smile.
Yes.
So why did you choose to use comedy to talk about compensation?
Yeah. So I do think for myself, and some of it is just maybe it's the way I grew up. Like I'm a very it's what I talk about with some of my friends, and since you have a YouTube channel, I'm what you may have to help translate. This might be like nugget. I say that I'm very approachable, which is a nice way of saying I'm not classically handsome.
Okay.
Right? I'm just a guy. Like, so people, like, I couldn't necessarily rely on being good looking, or I can't dance. I'm not very talented in a lot of ways, but people will laugh at me because I'm kind of a goofy dude. So comedy is like, okay, how do I reach people? Like, I can be relatable and approachable. If I looked more like Brad Pitt, I probably wouldn't try to be funny, which is why you see very few like super attractive comedians if you look at the professional world, other than like Matt Rife. I think that's the exception. We have one American comedian who's like a good looking person. The rest are, very average looking people. And very realistically, I realized at a very early age that like I could, connect with people through things that seemed ridiculous or and I grew up in the southern United States in Georgia, and we tend to grow up speaking in like in that part of the country, we tend to speak in analogies a lot more. So like I always joke that if you can relate something to like a weather event, a place, and put an animal in it, that you can like make a ridiculous analogy that people will, it's like, like that's crazier than, 3 possums in a sack, underneath a trailer park or something. Like we would always use these random analogies in terms of phrase. As I grew up to be an adult, the random analogies and the, just kind of throwing things out there made people laugh, made people giggle. and for whatever reason, it's sometimes endearing to people. So I've always just leaned toward that as my preferred method of being able to connect with people.
Now we have something to teach you. So you teach us about nugget, and in Portuguese we say when you use humor to talk about things, we usually say that this person never left the 5th grade.
They never left the 5th grade.
Yeah.
Fernandez looks like
That, yeah, you're
like
that.
that.
You never left the 5th grade?
Yeah.
I've never.
I've often been, so here we'll say like, oh, he has a middle school like sense of humor, which is like 6th, 7th grade. But yes, it's the same thing. I never left the 5th grade.
Wow.
I love it.
So I have this 5th grade humor.
I remember Heat movie. Remember the movie called
The love
Hitch?
counselor.
Oh,
This
Hitch with the with Will Smith and Kevin James. Yeah.
We're telling about you, and it was like you can do these, or you can know Hitch, like to teach others.
Go to Hitch to teach
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that movie because the bite the lip scene where he's like,
Wow,
don't
this scene, I think so.
That scene, yeah. Okay, so you've got the scene where he gets the allergic reaction.
Yeah.
There's the scene with Kevin James who's the
Dancing.
big guy dancing, and he's like,
Wow.
"How do you dance?" He's like, "Oh, bite
You
the
can
lip."
do these and
Yeah, he's like,
bite
"No,
the
you can't
lips."
bite the lip." Yeah, I love that.
Good. Like, but that movie can teach us, like, be yourself. Like, it's correct. Because Hitch was trying to do something that was not, that word that you told me, that was not authentic.
Authentic, yeah.
Authentic. So we need to understand. We need to understand ourselves to produce something that is good.
Yeah.
That is not fake. The public is all the time evaluating us like, this is fake. This is not good. Like, I don't want fake too. It's just fake. Good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
no, that's a great point. And I think, so Will Smith maybe has fallen out of favor a little bit lately in the last few years, but at the time of that movie, Kevin James's popularity, way lower than Will Smith's in terms of like what people admired or what, Will Smith was inherently a cooler character. And you're right. Like that authenticity of Kevin James's character trying to be, and I can't even remember, I wish I could remember the name of his character, but his character trying to be something that he's not. But it turns out like millions of people really like Kevin James as a comedian, as a person, and that type of thing, which kind of goes to knowing your audience, knowing, I do really well telling jokes at a compensation conference or total rewards conference. Not so much if I was like, at a medical conference or those things. Like, but knowing where your audience are, connecting with people, being authentic you're right. Like that's kind of that message of that movie.
And what do you consider are the misconceptions in compensation that we should navigate with a smile?
Yeah, so we had a panel discussion. So I'm probably not going to be able to do full justice to what some of the other panelists did, but we did talk a lot about pay equity and the laws that are popping up. And there are laws popping up in Brazil. Obviously, there's a lot that's happening there. There's a lot happening in Europe. There's a lot that's happening in different parts of the United States. And, part of what we were trying to tackle was, those misconceptions, whether it's things like the pay gap versus pay equity is really important. So the pay gap is sort of like what's the absolute difference in earnings between, say, men and women, or if there's different ethnic groups or any group that you're comparing to each other. But let's just use men and women as an example. Okay. So you might have a pay gap in the United States of, 23% between men and women or 22%. Pay equity is like, how do you explain those differences between the two? So our panelist, Gail Greenfield, did a great job explaining that there's some reasons that you can explain in there that are justifiable. Like maybe there's people that spend more time in the workforce. If you look at data, you can see that there's impacts to women that take time off to have children or do things. Like there's certain like social things that are built in there, expectations of people or different values that people have that create a pay gap. But when you look within the workforce in a company at people doing the same job, are they still being paid equitably, or is there a gap? So presumably we would really like to not see a gap between somebody based on their gender doing the same job. But it's not the same thing. It doesn't mean that everybody gets paid the same, right? It doesn't mean that, regardless of your experience or regardless of that. So that's a really tough topic, right? There's a lot of sensitivity around that. As a man talking about something that typically disadvantages women, because most like it's a difficult topic. So being able to like laugh about it, to be able to like be vulnerable about the fact that like there are social problems that have existed way before any of us were born. Like there are things that have been around for hundreds of years that we're trying to solve, and that we're not going to be able to solve them in like 2 weeks. Like we're not going to go to a conference, meet about things, and then go back to our companies, and by Friday everything is, hundreds of years of social injustice will be fixed. But being able to acknowledge that, maybe poke a little bit of fun at that. Those are important things to take sort of the edge off of that, because people feel threatened sometimes, depending on whether it's business owners that are concerned about where their costs are going to go, or managers that are worried about how to like define performance with their employees, or have, more direct conversations about people's skills. All of those things come into play. So being able to sort of like take that and look at that from a like, hey, what are we, how do we make progress? Yeah. How do we be a little optimistic is a good word. How do we go like, what's good progress to make on this?
Yeah, it's not easy. Like, I was trying to find the way we speak, I don't know in English, but terms of speech for this topic. When you speak for like a man speaking for these guys or this gap, we don't have don't have the terms of speech. Is correct to say like this? To understand, like it's not easy.
You are not
because
in
a woman is
in a
looking
woman's shoes, for example.
Right.
So you're not her. You're not a woman to say
to feel in your skin, like
right. Or I think the phrase that comes up a lot in sort of American English now is we talk about mansplaining. Mansplaining, where it's like, oh, you're. Let me tell you how difficult it is to be a woman.
Yeah.
I can. Yeah, that's kind of the concept of. And it's specifically making fun of that, of like, oh, let me tell you
So you think you know?
I think I know. Yeah, you don't know how hard it is to be a woman. I know because I know a woman, and that is a place that I try to certainly avoid, but it's a risk point, right? Like it's hard. Like I can't not be a man right now. So like it's hard, and I can't have the experiences that like you would have had as a woman. But I also can acknowledge those. It's finding that place to be able to acknowledge those experiences, acknowledges the difference, and also try to say, how do I take down the barrier? So if you have experiences as a woman that are a disadvantage, at least if I can find and acknowledge them, then I can figure out how to like remove that barrier if that's keeping you from, going somewhere or doing, like, and by going, in your career or whatever it is.
Do you like stand-up comedy?
Do I like it?
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I probably spend too much time, catching Netflix specials, or I'll go out.
And the ones that you stay seated. No.
Yeah. The ones where you stay, the sit down comedy when you do that. There are, I will go to like live shows and things. I've started, my kids are, I have twin boys and they're 14 years old now. So they're old enough to start going to like live stand-up comedy things. And so that's a fun experience to see something new. It's fun for me when I like if there's somebody famous that comes through our town and we get to go see it, and then they see it like come out on Netflix or Amazon, like 6 months later, they're like, I remember when he told those jokes. It's beautiful. It's an art form to go watch.
I think you need to be so smart and have to have a brain speed, because it's not easy. You have the public. Most of the time they interact with the public and producing something that, of course, you have you have a plan, a joke plan, but you don't know what is coming from the public. So it's new all the time.
And all these people looking towards you, so and waiting for you to say something funny.
Yeah, I'm here to smile.
It's pressure. It's pressure.
It's not just say something. It must be funny.
Right. Like it's definitely an art form for people who aren't afraid of public speaking. But I do think it's like that next level of public speaking, because like the feedback on that is so immediate. Like if I'm going and talking to an audience, like we had a session today a couple hours ago, and I had a joke that like didn't work, and you immediately know that the joke doesn't work. Because there's like two people that give you a courtesy laugh because they're your friend. They're like, ha, ha, ha. And you're like, okay. And, and then it's like, all right, I've got to recover from that rejection.
I know. It's not easy. So the ability to recover fast, like you told, because
it's a resilience thing to turn around and go, you know what, but the next thing will make them laugh.
To go to a theater to do the presentation, like you practice before, you test like these jokes with friends. I know that these guys sometimes do these, like, let me test you in a dinner with my family, like with friends. And then you go to the theater, but sometimes the reception is not good as you were expecting. Like
I've found that, so I have really good friends that will be honest with me. But I found that like who the audience is, where they're at the time of day, like I've almost stopped testing things on friends. Because it'll either make you overconfident or underconfident. Because your friends will they'll laugh and they'll go, oh, that was funny, because they have that context. Part of the joke writing thing, I took a class on this because I was I really want to understand this.
Wow.
And a lot of the people, they were like, I want to be a stand-up comedian. I was just there because I was like, I tell jokes at HR conferences. And they were all like, well, that's silly. But they were like, it's a great thing. But like writing the joke, and this will, if I go back to the theme of trust, it's writing the joke to go, how can I connect with the audience on this? Like there's a bunch of people in a room that came on some level to be entertained, but like where is their headspace at? And how do I put this in a way to make it both not offensive, but also like create a little bit of shock value for them, like something that's new. Like what makes a joke funny is that it's new, right? It's a new way of thinking. It's reframing something. So that's where I think sometimes people give comedians credit for being really smart, but I think it's just like having a different way to look at the world, right? And reframe it, which is actually really helpful when you talk about data analysis and those things, which is where I like to blend the things together, because you're looking for how to, like, maybe the person's expecting me to go a certain way, but then there's the unexpected there.
Yeah, I can see this last 15 years, these comedian guys are growing the TV and shows like Joey Rogan podcast.
Yeah.
He's a comedian guy
Yeah.
that did like a contract, that million contract with Spotify because of the podcast, but his background is comedian.
Right.
And like, I think there is a new way to understand it. When you go to a presentation, take a look like the same. This is my next question to you, but you go to the front of the
audience.
The audience, you need to do something to smile, to laugh, because it's something like this for all the audience. And then you go, sometimes the story open the door to go to the subject we need to talk. Sometimes it's not so good, it's hard, but you can control the population, the audience or the population. When you think about a president, I don't know, of course, but for us, Barack Obama, the way he talks is easy to understand all over the world. He has some kind of jokes or things like to smile at the beginning of the conversation. Of course, he has a huge group teaching him like to do the correct way.
And things.
But this is the talk about this, and then like for HR people, they need to understand this. And do you have a method to build these, and you can teach my folks like
yeah all right, so one of the things that you think, if you talk to consultants or anybody, one of the best things to do in life is like best practices. So who does things really well. There's a lot of comedians that do things like through straight shock humor, and then there's a lot of comedians who do things that I think, particularly like working in HR, we try not to be offensive. Like, we're not going to sit and tell, dirty jokes to try to just shock people with something gross or disgusting or whatever, right? So I look at comedians that do a really good job of that. So there's a British comedian, Michael McIntyre. Michael McIntyre. He hosts some like shows, but his humor is pretty. It's clean. But he also he hosts like a game show kind of thing where they'll drop people into situations in the UK, but he does a lot of other things. But I love to study how he does things, because he does humor that sort of lifts people up. He's self-deprecating, but he also does things that like he doesn't put people down, like doesn't make other people look bad to make a joke. Or in the United States, you got like Jim Gaffigan. Or, one of my favorites, like somebody that I take my kids to, which he's not 100% clean, but it's like Mike Birbiglia, because he's a storyteller. And so his jokes are long form. Mike Birbiglia. Yeah, he's sort of out of the Northeast. But he tells stories. And he's got a bunch of specials on Netflix, but he's super vulnerable and relatable. Like, his stories are about his life and his experiences. Yeah, that guy, Mike Birbiglia. So he has a number of like specials that have come out, and it talks about everything from like sleep disorders that he's had to like deciding whether or not he and his wife were going to have kids. But he does these long form stories. Again, it's more of like the podcast format of like, he's already got a trusted audience and he's doing those things. But if you go to his show, he talks about his health crisis. He talks about really difficult issues, health crises, being abandoned in relationships. He talks about all of these things that would otherwise be like really sad, but he's very vulnerable, and he brings you in the story, but he uses comedic techniques, like callbacks and setting, set up, like the callback jokes that he does are brilliant, because he'll like tell a story, do a little joke, but then that little joke comes back later on and throughout the story, or and he'll close things out. So it's brilliant storytelling in that sense. Versus maybe like there's rapid fire comedians, like I think of Dimitri Martin does like one-liners and those types of things, and he's kind of like, well, there's people that do that, but I try to watch people for different lessons on that. Partly because partly because it's just funny, and then partly because it's the way that they tell a story. Another one, if you need a good one, which I feel like is great for HR professionals, is like Nate Bargatze.
Nate Bargatze?
Yeah, Bargatez. He's got podcasts and things, but just a very relatable. Guy. Yeah, that guy.
Okay.
So yeah. So if you have show notes for the show, like I would love, I love to share those people with people because he never attack, like his kind of rules of comedy are he doesn't attack anybody else. He doesn't if there's somebody that he's going to make fun of in the story, it's going to be himself. And that vulnerability and sort of that honesty of just he is who he is and he's comfortable with who he's at. That's a place that first off, I think it's genuinely authentic. I don't think any of these guys, like if you follow their life, I don't think that they're like, it's not like they have a stage presence that's completely different. So like there are comedians that have like personas that they put on. And I'm not as big of a fan of those. Like I'm from Georgia in the South, but like there's like Larry the Cable Guy, but that guy doesn't sound anything like if you were to meet him in real life, like that's not even his name. That's not what he does. Yeah. But people like I just mentioned are like authentically telling just stories from their life.
Yeah. I think that relates to the fact that as humans, when we think about our development as a society, we rely on people that are not a threat for us.
Yeah.
So when you use comedy in a way that you're not a threat, so that you're not gonna use this for something bad, then people connect better. Right. Make better connections. And for example, when you have to say something or to present a HR, I don't know, pacote, I forgot this word.
I don't know, like package.
Presentation?
Yeah, it can be. So when you have something to present in HR, for example, and then you use not comedy, but humor, when you show your vulnerability and when you tell people stories, you are telling people that you are not a threat. So that thing that I'm presenting to you is not a threat. That's something good for you. Right. So I think that comes from our origins as humans.
Right. So like if you think about it like something that's kind of funny, but the opposite end of the spectrum is like they just did the roast of Tom Brady. Yeah. Like that was just just came out on Netflix, and it's people being, I mean, it's comedy and it's meant to be satire, but it's people being incredibly mean to each other all of the time. Like that is maybe funny occasionally for certain things, and there's a certain shock value. But like when people are watching that, they're not watching it to learn anything from it. They're watching it to maybe feel better about themselves because they're seeing somebody very famous get taken down pegs. But that's not really what you want to do in your real life. Like that's a certain style of humor. I'm going to call it that, but like that's the opposite of what I would try to go for. So if I gave you the good examples, like watching roasts or roast battles or those things, like that is a style of humor that people like, but it's not productive in that way.
Yeah. I was watching the documentary about Trump in Netflix, the new one, and they use comedy to speak with something that is serious. They put together these, and when you understand what is at the backstage, the background of this is something that's powerful because you are trying to become someone. It's a kind of a cloud, understand that the people that's writing all these copy is doing both things, like to understand that I put comment in the exact moment that you need to understand that the people is not fair or is not
right.
You understand?
To highlight it's kind of like highlighting the ridiculous.
Ridiculous, good.
Yeah.
But it's something that is, oh my God, there's a huge plan to use all this stuff because of that moment to bring the value to your mind.
So if you want a comedian who's very good at that so if you have HBO, right? So John Oliver does this. So he does kind of like news stories. So I would put him in the category of being a little more, he's probably not HR friendly. He's not a clean comedian. It's maybe not something to watch with the kids if they're, young and unexposed to things. But John Oliver does these long form things where he takes issues like statistical analysis or, the banking system or the pharmaceutical system. And he goes into those issues but what he does is he uses humor to just like highlight the utter ridiculousness or the injustice of things. So he uses as kind of a weapon, maybe more so than what I would recommend to people in their personal life. But but what you were just talking about, he does that perfectly to like just point out how crazy something is or how unjust it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have a kind of a John Oliver, a Brazilian John Oliver. Have you ever watched on HBO what is the name of our Brazilian, that Porta dos Fundos?
o Porchat?
Não, pô. We have the same because the program, they brought the program to Brazil, like...
They took the format.
Gregório do Vivier.
Que é o Greg News. O Greg News.
O Greg News is the same of
Uh-huh.
this John Oliver. We have the same, and he uses the comedian, the comedy to do this, to produce, and wow, it's smart. Of course, he's left side politics, left side strong with this battle with this side.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, like if you go to understand the tools and the mechanism behind this, I think is smart, and I love to understand this. Sometimes I speak with the right side guys, that friend of mine, like, Emerson, are you crazy? I hate this guy, and doesn't matter. I'm just looking just to the tools and the way he speaks, because this is the point we need to get and to use in our presentations and all this stuff.
Yeah, like I mean, the comedians that I referenced before, you know, they're kind of on all different ends of the political spectrum. But if you like, it's the method that they do it that's a really useful.
Yeah. That's something, because if you can tell a story and you don't have method to do it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter which side are you, because the side that's gonna tell the best story is gonna win. You know, so so if you don't know how to tell stories, it really doesn't matter, because you are not probably going to connect to people, and they are not going to understand your point. And
this conversation is going so good. Let me ask you. Today, most of people is going to talk, not to listen. Listen is something that is primarily we need to do it, like to increase our knowledge. But all the time, I need to speak about my side. It doesn't matter yours. Oh, I'm left, right. Oh, I don't want to listen to you because you don't think like me. What do you think about it?
What do I think? Sort of the politics of
not the politics, about the part of
the position that
you need to listen, not to talk.
So, you know, I watch my kids and I watch people as like they're growing up differently. So I think like it's interesting to me that people want to consume things so quickly. Like we talked about, you know, like there's the TikTok and the swiping, and you know, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about online dating or consuming news or media. People do things very, very quickly. So I think I worry about, like, as new generations enter the workforce and as you do things, being able to get people to listen will be an important thing. Like, how do you drive people to actually listen and understand? Like, I don't have if I had the answer for that, I'd probably, you know, be super rich. But I do think that that'll be something that we have to figure out how to do. I think that, again, going back to that currency of trust, is getting people to realize, like, hey, I'm not just taking an opposing side of you. I don't want to convince you of something because of that. Like, we're all working to a better good. So finding that, you know, part of the storytelling is, you know, finding a way that we're all sort of on a journey together. You know, most stories tie around some kind of hero's journey is one of the classic. You know, I think in literature there's an idea that there's only like 7 different types of stories. There's probably a whole podcast episode on just that. But you know, one of the main themes of stories is you know, sort of that hero's journey. The more that you can get people to see that you're on the journey with them together, and that you're both kind of like working through this journey, like if you use like Lord of the Rings, right? Is that a familiar concept, right?
Yeah.
Famous book. So Lord of the Rings, you know, Frodo's the main character who's trying to get the ring to destroy the ring, but there's all these other people that are on the journey with him. Now there's all these people that are opposing him. So what we have to do is fight sort of that paranoia that people think that everybody else is trying to stop them. And realize that, you know, there's going to be some Gandalfs and some Sams, and that we're like that in the big picture, like in a business, sometimes you have like there's tension between HR and finance, but if you go, hey, like at the end of the day, we're all trying to take the ring to the mountain to throw the ring in there and destroy, evil. Like we're working through those things together. As long as people know that you're on the same side in the journey, that's an important place to start from.
Yeah. Oh, I'm start to watch The Chosen, that series one, famous, that is got funding to build these, and I think we have the fourth season we have right now.
Okay.
And they are doing the same. Like you have the story that everybody knows. They are putting like the autism there and connecting with the people with their stories to go to the point that they want to go. Like this is not. It looks like strange when you see this. Oh my God! There's a person.
They just rolled a body in here.
A body.
Is this
I
part
was
of a
like
test?
this.
I feel.
Oh my God! Is he real?
Just the soda. All right, we feel better. Thank you, soda delivery guy who scared us all.
But
See, I told you I didn't do scary movies, and he just rolled in.
Yeah,
That's fine.
It just looks like he just rolled in on
because
a
your
board
imagination
card.
goes to.
For those that didn't get to see that, there
we
was
need to show this.
we need to show you guys what
Wow, take a
are
look.
we
Like,
laughing about.
Yeah, that definitely
It really looks like
like
a dead body.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's not good. So,
So as long as it doesn't stand up,
yeah.
yeah.
then it's good.
So, but I was trying. I mean, like we have a story that was 2,000 years ago, and then you can connect today this journey, like using the stories from this moment, and to connect and to make more understandable and to get a fit with the public, like
It's to make it approachable, right?
Yeah.
I think that, and maybe you have a better word for that, but
what is the word?
Approachable.
Approachable,
Making it, so it's
Tangible.
accessible to people,
Yeah.
right? So you can take something that's difficult to understand and make it easy, or
Yeah, I
make
think
it realistic.
people need that because people don't really think deep on what they are experiencing in life, so they have to see it in another context to realize that that's something related to what I'm living or what I've learned. I think people need this how can I say it, this connection, so with the imagination or the stories that are not necessarily their own stories,
Right.
oh man, like
I have one question.
yeah, because we need to go.
Yes, because I saw on your LinkedIn profile, you describe yourself as a pay transparency solver.
A what?
Pay transparency
It's me?
solver.
Solver. Yeah.
Solver. The risk of
I want to figure it out, right? Like so pay transparency is a tricky item, right? It's a big topic. It's, if you look at all the laws that are being passed, so part of what I think the challenge with pay transparency is people don't understand what, first of all, they don't understand what it means, like in general. So people hear things like, my company has to disclose a wage gap, or there's going to be a salary range posted on a job posting, or you have to tell me if I'm paid more or less than my peers. But like, how in the compensation profession or in HR or payroll or whatever, how do we get to the point where we're explaining to people so they know why, within a company, when I look at things, when I took the new job I had, the people interviewing me said, hey, like, what do you think about this pay transparency thing? I said, there's a whole lot of discussion about the legal regulatory environment, but really what it comes down to is, do people know why they're getting paid, how much they're getting paid? So most other things in markets, and this is, hopefully this translates well into Brazil, but in the U.S., if you want to buy a house, you can go on the internet and see how much somebody's selling that house for. If you want to buy groceries or a car, I can go online, I can see a price, I can, everything, like I can order stuff on Amazon and it comes directly to my house. Everything has like a known price, except for things like health insurance, your job, how much we pay a salary. Well, there's just a few things that are still left. Childcare is sometimes a mystery. Most of the markets are very transparent. And so imagine if you go into a grocery store anywhere in the world and you said, I'm going to buy bread. And they're like, well, after you check out, we'll tell you how much it is.
You pick the bread you want,
yeah,
and I tell you how much
you pick
it
is, and then there's that. Imagine that we were doing that for just basic items. People would be like, "This is so inefficient." I got the wrong bread. I wasn't even going to take that bread. Now I got to put that bread back on the shelf, and now I got to go in and get another thing. And yet with jobs, the thing that people spend most of their time with, we do that all the time, all around the world. It's no big deal. We waste. I've seen estimates that in the United States, $40 billion of time was wasted in a given year just of people interviewing for jobs that they weren't going to take because the job paid less money than what they were already making because nobody wanted to tell them. So how much time is it's just a very inefficient market.
Yeah.
But it's also employers are scared to be the first one to say this is how much we're paying, right? There's this concept of, well, if I go out and say, well, this is how much my company is paying for everything, and the other companies don't say, then they can just, pay a penny more. Yeah. They can just, outbid me by a slight amount, or they can frame it a different way, which is where I think that the laws and the regulation actually help, push things along so that everybody's working from the same.
And you have the answer, when we're talking this, I can see just the money or a story. Yeah. So when you have a place that you would like to be there and to build your story, to put all your energy over there. So that's the point. Why I'm telling you about me, you know? I think you go to the next step. But if you stay just in this step, showing your money is money here and there, is the same. Yeah. It's just a paper. It's something that, of course, is important, but it's just a paper. It's the same. There's no difference.
Yeah.
You pay for a car you have a SpaceX units.
Right.
What they have. So to be so value, when you think about that Tesla, we have Toyota and all the brands together is not the same value, but it's not about the company because to produce cars is the same. So why is so valued this company? Because of the story, the proposal, and to go to Mars and to discover
the hope of the technology.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
And when you say you are a pay transparency solver, then you are inviting people to come with you in this journey. So it's like telling them a story and saying, I'm going on this journey too. So I'm going to solve this. So come with me and so that's a smart way to describe it, So.
Right. I didn't notice I did not put pay transparency answerer.
Yeah. Good.
We're working on the solution, right? So I hedged my commitment there because it's a hard thing to do, but let's work on that.
But it's a long time goal, So I think you are thinking ahead.
Yeah.
When you describe yourself.
If you know where you're going, then at least we know where the mountain is that we got to go to throw the ring in, right? Exactly. Doesn't mean that we're going to get there tomorrow. Although I don't understand in Lord of the Rings why they didn't just stay on the birds when the birds came. Then they got off the birds and then they walked, right? Yeah, you're with me. They, they had all these big eagles and they're like, why can't we just fly to the mountain? But so if I find that, if we get birds on the pay transparency journey, I'm not getting off the bird. I'm just saying bird. Let's go all the way to the mountain, skip over the orcs.
Exactly.
Yeah. What changed
That's
the
a
world?
Callback in comedy right there.
Yeah.
When you go back to the thing.
What changes the world is not the answers, but the questions. This moves us to find another answer.
Yeah.
Bryan, you are smart and a good guy. And oh my God, unfortunately we need to stop here, but see you in Brazil doing this
have you ever
one.
been to Brazil?
I have not. I need to go.
So you are invited now.
Yeah.
I will go. I'll come find you guys.
Oh yeah?
Brazil's on my list of places to visit.
Oh yeah? What is a place you are looking for?
I mean, I don't
Rio.
I think Rio's cliche.
Yeah,
an
good.
American to say
I
that I would
was
go there.
this.
But there's a ton of resorts and places.
And,
I mean, there's probably some nature stuff, but I'm a little bit scared of I'm scared of the fish. I'm scared of the fish with the big teeth.
Okay.
I'll be honest, but maybe that's a childhood thing. But but I would love to go. Yeah.
Oh my God! So we need to do to continue this episode over there. So
Yeah.
thank you so much again.
All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, what's the
I appreciate
way?
it.
It's
I
like
don't-
this, bro.
do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, bro. All right, here we go. Do we do the same thing? Yeah. Equality.
Equality.
There
Exactly.
we go. There we go.
Brian,
I'm not going to mansplain the handshake.
Oh, thank you.
Some words in Portuguese just to ask. Se você gostou desse episódio, senta o dedo nesse like. Sabe por quê? Entra nessa aqui, ó. Porque quando você coloca o dedinho no like, você diz pra muita gente que esse episódio é bom pra ser consumido. Compartilha também isso aqui, tá? Tá sendo uma honra poder trazer as entrevistas que estão acontecendo aqui direto pra você, com os convidados falando assim do jeito super legal com a gente. Então, vem que não acabou ainda, tem mais coisa chegando, hein? Brian.
What does that say?
Good.
If you liked it, subscribe.
Yeah, good.
All right,
good.
thanks.
Like, subscribe, and do
all
all
that
this stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, do it, please.
Do this in English, like ask for subscribe.
Oh, I'm not good at that.
Yeah,
I'm a
go
terrible
ahead.
salesperson.
No.
All right, yeah. So if you, all right, there. All right. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe below to get more content, and maybe send me to Brazil. So here we go.
You have a good voice.
Have a
like,
good
voice. Do the radio voice.
subscribe. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you very much.
All right.
See
thanks.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.